Welcome, everybody, to Get Real, Creating Safe Spaces for Tough Conversations. Joining me today is Shakayra Stern and Ariana King. Welcome to both of you. I'm going to go over a few guidelines for the event and just get everyone up to speed on what's going to happen today. So if you'll notice, everyone's video is turned off, but this session will be recorded. So you can tune into to meetup.com/blog, where we'll post the recording of this video. And if you subscribe to our newsletter, we'll send it right to you. People who are RSVP'd for this event will also receive a copy of that video. Your audio is also going to be muted during the event, but if you have a question at any time, at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button for Q&A. And if you ask a question, we have Janine and Cindy in the background. They'll be answering those questions or getting them queued up to ask Ariana and Shakayra. So anytime you have a question throughout the event, go ahead and pop it into that Q&A section. And then this is an awesome feature that we have, closed captioning. So if you'd like to read the text of what we're saying as we're talking, there's an icon for closed captioning at the bottom of the screen. Go ahead and turn that on, and big thanks to Alex for making that happen. It's really awesome. So without further ado, here's our agenda for today. I'm going to introduce Ariana and Shakayra, and then we're going to have a Q&A session where we talk about safe spaces and tough conversations, and they're really going to get into their groups and what they do. And then we'll have time at the end for a Q&A session with you all online. And we'll answer some of your questions. So let's say hi to Shakayra and Ariana. So let me introduce you to, first, Ariana King. She's a senior community support specialist and founding member and organizer of Meetup in Color. Meetup in Color is one of Meetup's ERGs, which stands for Employee Resource Group. She's helped organize a group whose mission is to assist Meetup in increasing diversity and inclusion in the company by promoting intersectional cultural awareness. Ariana has been instrumental in facilitating conversations at Meetup about equity and justice as it relates to race. She consistently utilizes her passion for social justice to advocate for educational equity and to build safe spaces. She holds a BA in Africana Studies with focus on education policy from Mount Holyoke College. So welcome, Ariana.
Hi.
And now let me introduce you to Shakayra Stern. She's an author and founder and organizer of the worldwide sisterhood movement, including the Mixed Girls Meetup Group. The Mixed Girls Meetup Group launched in 2019, and it connects women of mixed heritage through virtual and in-person conferences and masterclasses monthly, and now spans a community of over 4,000 women worldwide. The two-time author, she's passionate about providing her bonus sisters with healing tools that helped her get her self-esteem back, and she places tremendous focus on women being their authentic selves and creating a bond of sisterhood with women from all over the world. So welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
I know we have a lot of questions to get to, and I want to stop talking and let you both talk, so let's go right into it. So first for Shakayra, can you tell me more about the Mixed Girls Meetup Group and about why you started this group?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I never really planned to start this group. So just if anyone's in here and is not sure what your group is going to be about and what your event is going to be about, I actually went to a meetup event, which was for German speakers in New York. At the time, I was staying in New York, and I just felt very lonely and like I didn't really have people I could relate to. So when I went to the event, although the people were really nice, I still felt like it wasn't for me. And I've kind of had this all along, like my life, like my teenage years, and also like my adulthood years, where I just never really belonged in a community. Like, even though I would say I embody two communities, either one of them kind of always said, well, you're not enough of this, you're not enough of that, or you got to add something. So I was never really myself. So in January last year, After 5 attempts, by the way. It wasn't just something like, yeah, I'm gonna sign up. I kept pressing like I'm gonna register, and I just felt too nervous. And then I just started a group just for people of mixed heritage, and specifically women, as I feel that I may be a bit biased now, but I feel like we're a lot more emotional, and we need spaces where we can just vent, where we can just talk about issues that just concern us, where no one is really there just to, point a finger and say, oh, well, you're exaggerating or something like that. So that's how it started.
That's awesome advice for new organizers. Like, it's not going to get everything the first try. It's going to take some time to get it all right. That's awesome. Ariana, can you talk more about Meetup in Color and the resource group and how it got started?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with what is an employee resource group. So that is an affinity space for people who share a particular identity, who want to come together to discuss how their shared identity impacts where they are in a particular space. So that's not to mean that the space as it is unsafe. Creating safe spaces is a dedicated area to have specific kinds of discussions. So the Meetup in Color group is a place for employees who identify as having a ethnic minority background to come together and talk about how that impacts them as an individual in society and a working professional in tech. All of those things have a different connotation when you're a person of color. So coming together at Meetup, that's what we did. We made space for ourselves to really connect and start to celebrate our heritage at work, which was a fantastic thing.
That's awesome. And thank you for all of the events that you do at Meetup. They're always great to attend. We appreciate it. Shakayra, I'm wondering, how do you lead an exclusive group that focuses on the experience of women of a marginalized community? What is your approach to that?
So for me, the main thing really is, so similar to what Ariana just said, it really has to be a safe space. By safe space, I mean a place where, as you said in my intro, you can be your authentic self, and we put a focus on healing sort of versus trauma. So again, kind of echoing what Ariana said, people of color, a lot of us have been through some type of trauma. For myself, it was bullying in school. And I kind of I do want to speak about it, but I don't want to dwell on it. So having the safe space is that we come together to speak about what has happened to us. And then we have positive action steps, how we can address that and how we can become, more happy people in general. Because I feel like it's always nice to speak about it, but then once the person leaves the event, what happens then? So I want to really make sure that people that come to my events, it's not just for 2 hours, they can go away and they can implement those things that I speak about with them. And yeah, just having like a space of healing and positivity.
That's awesome, thanks. Ariana, your group is a little bit different from Shakayra's in that sense, in that it's focused on an internal group that's about inclusivity for all. So what's your approach to leading a group like that?
Yeah, so a safe space doesn't necessarily mean that only people of color will show up. We are a company group, which means we have events for everyone. And the focus is on the identities of people of color. So when you come to a Meetup in Color event, you're coming to learn about the things that we have to share, hear our perspective, and really help us celebrate the things that make us different and a part of the community. And we make that possible by ensuring that everyone feels okay being vulnerable and protected in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Moving right along, Shakayra, so you focus on positivity and light in your group. How do you ensure that the atmosphere stays positive and is focused on healing and not so much on trauma? Can you touch on some of the frameworks you use for that?
Yes, of course. So for me, it kind of had to come with sort of practice of doing several events, but kind of from the beginning, I have like a set of housekeeping, I call it, that I go through at the beginning of my event. So that is letting people know, like, the time constraints, although I always make sure to say that, you know, this is a space where you can just openly speak about what is on your heart, what is on your mind. You can be vulnerable, you won't be judged. But also I make a point of also saying that this is a non-judgmental space. So, you know, people won't be scared to say something, because we have to be, you know, good listeners firstly, and we are, you know, not listening to respond, we're listening just to hold space. So I'm just holding space for those people that, you know, maybe they never had someone or never had a group where they can just express themselves. So my main job as a host is to hold that space for those people, and you know, just make sure that everyone is also feels encouraged. So also acknowledging people speaking up, because some people may feel really shy. So I always make sure I acknowledge the courage as well.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Ariana, you focus on vulnerability and protecting people of color. So how do you ensure that atmosphere stays safe and trusting for people to open up?
So as a facilitator of an interracial group, there's a lot of responsibility, because when you put yourself in the forefront and you say, I'm going to create a safe space, you then have to follow through. So you take on the role as the protector of the people of color in that room. And for me, whenever I get in front of the company and I'm speaking about race relations, I stand as a representative of Black identifying people of color. And that's not to say that that is my intention or that anyone's shoving me into that box, but in a way, that's what you end up being. So you have to be very deliberate about your intentions. Personally, I typically come into a situation trying to help someone leave with something more than what they came with. So it might be simply a positive interaction about race, because everything else has been so overwhelming. It might be an educational experience. And staying focused in yourself as an organizer and understanding what you came for and committing to that intention is really important. Also, like Shakayra said, there have to be ground rules for both yourself and the participants. Set expectations really clearly. And I tend to stay away from open-ended conversations or questions when we are having more serious personal conversations, because it can be unwieldy. So instead of asking, you know, what did you think about this situation? A question more along the lines of, how were you impacted by a situation? Because, you know, people can just rattle on forever, but if you have intentions and you need things to remain focused, giving your participants a focus and a roadmap really helps steer things in a positive and constructive manner.
Awesome answer. Shakayra, going off that, do you have any advice on a situation where, you know, someone isn't following those kind of housekeeping rules? You know, let's say they don't RSVP to an event, or they are interruptive.
Yes, and I actually had to learn the hard way. So there was someone that just showed up, and I kind of usually pride myself in vetting people that attend. As Ariana just mentioned, you know, this is meant to be a safe space. It's not just any random person that can just pop in. However, that person did. And what I do to kind of prevent that now, I only share the Zoom link, or when we were still doing in-person events, the address with people who have RSVP'd, in order to kind of prevent that. Because I had to, it was a lot, like, you know, as a host, because obviously you've got all the other people, all the other guests, and I just had to say it in a polite manner. The person still joined the event, but it had to take a lot of boundary setting from my end and guiding conversation. So if you find someone being at your event that's quite, I don't know, abrupt and interrupting people, it's your job as a host to also guide that conversation, lead the conversation, and just politely tell them, and all right, we appreciate all your input. We would like to also give the other guests an opportunity to speak as well.
Yeah, being a meetup organizer is wearing every hat in the room, doing it all.
Yeah.
Ariana, do you have a similar instance on how you deal with that kind of behavior and how you get things on track?
Yeah. So compared to Shakayra, I'm actually pretty fortunate that all of the potential attendees for the events that I organize are meetup employees. So these are people that we know day to day, we have interactions and relationships, but sometimes the tone and the energy can be counterproductive. And we know these people. We know no one is showing up for the purpose of being disruptive. But as the organizer, when you feel that change, you have to read the room and you take a pause, command the room, organize the situation, and assume positive intent. So, okay, this person said something that isn't working. This person used the word colored. This is something that did not happen to me at Meetup, but has happened before. Someone used the word colored, and they weren't trying to be offensive, but that phrase is antiquated and inappropriate. So be corrective and supportive and highlight the positives and what they have to bring, but also let them know the impact of the negative aspects that they brought to the table. Because like I said, we want to leave with a purpose. We want to leave better than we came, and to create this space and allow people to continue with misinformation is counter to our objective.
Shakayra, can you talk a little bit about how your group has changed since George Floyd's murder? Has that changed the dynamic of your group or your conversations?
Yeah, it really has. I've had a lot of people approach me, message me, who aren't of mixed heritage. So often I've had moms who have biracial children that want to ensure that they're, instilling their children with the knowledge and the confidence, but also awareness of what the world is like and how the world might treat them. I've also had people general people like a Caucasian person asking to be an ally. What can they do to be more proactive about the cause? And it wasn't always necessarily that they attended the events, but just wanting to have a dialogue, a conversation, and just asking me in my experience what they can do to help.
Got it. Ariana, same question.
So prior to the recent wave of protest and activism, our group was focused on general education, exposure, cultural exploration, and internal support. And after the murder and the protests, there was a global necessity to have more serious conversations about oppression and injustice. And we started to use this group that had, a really fun celebratory vibe to have some more serious and heavy conversations specific to the plight of Black people in America and activism and social impact outside of the country. So because we had developed this safe space and this resource, we were able to almost instantly come to a place as a company where we could have some really serious conversations instead of having to start from the ground up.
With those serious conversations, have you found that's changed the dynamic of the group at all?
I think it more significant. So we've had employee resource groups for a while, and there was a lot of participation. But I think in this time, I can say everyone on the organizer board of Meetup in Color has felt heard and valued, and like this community that we built to support one another has now started to also support the company, and it's been a really great opportunity.
Shakayra, I just wanted to give you a chance if you had anything on that point, if it's changed the dynamic of your group since those conversations.
I wouldn't say, the dynamic has changed in the sense of in my social media presence. A lot of people have followed me that aren't of mixed heritage, and a lot of parents. I think the parents is really the main thing, where they want to ensure that in the future we don't have those tragedies happen again. And it starts at home. I genuinely believe it starts at home, because no one is born a racist. No one is born hating someone for their color. So I really appreciate that people are being proactive about it. And it was just nice for people just to ask, and sometimes even people just ask because they don't want to take up space. So I've had mothers message me, is it okay if I come? I'm not mixed, but is it okay because I'm aware I'm taking up space? And I appreciate that, because when I was growing up, those questions weren't even asked, so I think there is a real change happening, albeit small, but it is happening.
In that vein, can Can you talk about, you know, some advice that you would have for, you know, someone who's going to be a new organizer and what kind of challenges they're going to face and overcome?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a lot of anxiety. Believe it or not, before most events, I'm really nervous and I'm like, okay, what can happen now, you know? So I think my number one advice would be, honestly, just be yourself. I know it sounds very corny, but it's honestly, that's my magic formula, just being myself. Because I feel like it's going to take a lot of work and effort to put up this whole false pretense if you're going to have more than one event. So if you're just being yourself, there will be people who appreciate you for who you are and for who you truly are. Because I feel like a lot of us, Ariana, I'm sure you can touch upon this, that we sometimes code switch. And that's also one of the reasons why I started this event, because I don't want to code switch anymore. I just want to be myself. So just be aware that whatever it is, if it's pottery, if it's gardening, it's Mixed Girl Meetup, there will be someone in the world, especially a meetup is such a vast audience. There will be someone who will appreciate just you for you. And also really important, it doesn't have to be perfect. So you will learn as you go along. So it doesn't have to be this master plan and perfect agenda. Honestly, people, you will find that you'll go with the flow and then it just works. So yeah.
That's great advice. Ariana, same vein, do you have advice for organizers, whether that's someone who's starting an ERG or even just organizing on Meetup?
Well, I'm going to say do it. I'm not sure if you guys caught this. I work for Meetup. I love Meetup. I stand for Meetup. It's totally worth it. Give it a shot. But more specifically, find the element of yourself that you have to share. Study that part of yourself and really dive deep into what's special about you. And another element that we haven't really touched on much as a difference between Shakayra and I is that I am part of an organizer board. So once you realize that you are really good at finding event spaces and coming up with an idea, the concept of standing in front of a group of people gives you like earth-shattering anxiety, find a partner who believes in your ideals, who likes what you're trying to put together, and they can be the person who stands in front of the room. Find someone who's really good at finding more people to come to an event, because it doesn't matter how good your event is if no one shows up. This is a team building experience and you don't have to stand at the top by yourself. There are definitely a lot of different ways to go about holding a meetup group, and finding help is definitely an amazing way to do it.
Awesome. That's awesome. Shakayra, this is the question that I've been waiting for. What is the most powerful lesson you've learned as the organizer of the Mixed Girls Meetup Group?
So I would say as a really powerful lesson for me, number one is that every single event that I do, I'm amazed at how similar the experiences are from the people who join my events, no matter where in the world they are. And I truly mean that. I mean, all the way from Taiwan to South Africa, people who have joined my events that are of mixed heritage, we all have gone through similar experiences, despite us being in a different geographical location, which is, for me, every time I hear about it, it's just, I'm still like in disbelief, because I grew up thinking that I'm alone with my thoughts and what I'm going through. So for me, it still is. It's incredibly therapeutic to know that you have something in common with someone else, you know, and you don't even know them. And it's just this instant common ground that you have that connects you guys. So I don't know, I wouldn't even say 6 degrees of separation. It's probably, for me, it's probably just 2. So it's just where you are in the world and what we connect with. So it may be a different perspective, but the experiences are the same. And another lesson for me, just for me personally, is that being myself is enough. And that for me, it took a very long time for me to just accept me for me, and that people just like me. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but it's just, I'm just myself, and people appreciate my input and what I have to put out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, hopefully those kind of connections are, you know, happening every day on Meetup, and it really makes a difference. It really makes an impact on people's lives. Ariana, same question. What is the most powerful lesson you've learned as the organizer of Meetup in Color?
It sounds really cliche, but being a Meetup in Color organizer has taught me that an opportunity is exactly what you make it. 1 year ago, we threw awesome parties and we had a little education there, and we really concentrated our more serious and vulnerable conversations into forums that tended to be smaller, more intimate interactions. And as an organizer board, we have recently taken on the opportunity to grow the group that existed into a resource for the company when the need presented itself. And there was also space for us to sort of back away and deal with our emotions quietly, but taking that leap and really seizing the opportunity has strengthened all of us individually and as a meetup group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just want to build off that and share a little bit about some of the work that that you've been doing at Meetup. I'm gonna put up this slide. This is for Communities for Black Justice and Equity. So Ariana, take it away. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. So everyone at Meetup received, organizers and members should have received an email from David in response to the first round of protests. And one thing that we committed to was really walking the walk of supporting communities of color. So we've developed a pro network that is the Communities for Black Justice and Equity. This is an organizer-led network of Meetup, and the purpose is to elevate Black voices and experiences in helping to end racial justice. So if you have a group that is focused on race relations in any way, you can take a look at meetup.com/pro/black-justice or email blackjustice@meetup.com. And we're subsidizing the subscriptions for organizers who have groups who fall into this focus. If you have any more specific questions, you can definitely shoot an email to that address, and either myself or one of my fellow support specialists will be happy to give you more information and help you out with that.
You did. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, if anybody watching knows anyone who organizes a group like that or wants to get involved in a group like that, there's a landing page and you can share it. It's really been great, and those free Meetup subscriptions are just a great way to get those communities started and voices heard. Thank you both so much. We have a ton of questions coming in for the Q&A section, so I'd like to jump right in with that. They're for both of you, but I think this first one is for you, Ariana. So the question from Beth is, how do you start to create engagement around an ERG once you have the group together and you have a safe space? So like, what kind of activities and frequency of your events, and how do you keep people engaged and interested?
So consistency is the thing. I think people at Meetup will tell you that we have a monthly open forum. Sometimes we have a specific topic that we're going to cover, and sometimes it's just a space to really have open discussion about race relations in the world, not typically specifically at Meetup, but consistency. And I'm going to be honest, we throw parties. We have food, we have booze, and there is an educational element somewhere. Like when you're at work, sometimes it can be tiring. So really providing some respite that incorporates education, I think, is how most Meetup employees got to know who we were as a group.
I think this is for, I think either of you. So we can go one at a time. David asks, how do you facilitate meetings between people who oppose or even hate each other? I'm thinking of some of the facilitated cross-community encounters in Northern Ireland, and I know that you've spoken a lot about your groups and the purpose, but you know, maybe just some general advice around those areas.
You mean, sorry, I didn't catch the question quite. So how do you facilitate, could you repeat it? I just heard some of it.
How do you facilitate a meeting between people who might, you know, oppose or hate each other? I guess bringing people together from different viewpoints.
Right, okay. I think maybe I'm in a bit of more of a unique position because most of the time people do agree, but I have had people who kind of are a bit like negative Nancy, we say in the UK. So that kind of comes back to me then as a host to kind of guide the conversation and put it back to, so you have to really set boundaries. And again, I appreciate your input to this, but we are, you know, we want to focus now how we can get past this and come together and find a solution for this. So I'm a very solution-based person. So I always say that in the beginning of my events and also during conversation. It's kind of, you have to be an active listener. So if I see, it's like what Ariana was saying, reading the room, or if you're online, same thing, you're always going to have like a certain vibe that you feel. So if you're feeling it's going towards that, it's your job as a host to not interrupt and like, okay, stop the press. So you're going to have to say, oh, I appreciate, you know, if you're feeling anxious about saying, you can always say it's a time issue, you know, if you're not feeling confident to say that. But for me, I would say I'd like to focus on the solution now. I appreciate your input, and we can talk about this later on via DM or something like that, you know, if they really insist on having that, that opinion.
That's super helpful. Ariana, just wanted to give you a chance if you have anything on that topic.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a question as to whether or not there is a right or wrong or a difference of opinion. Our group is focused on race relations. If you are exhibiting racist behavior or using racist language towards someone, full stop. That's unacceptable. You cannot do that. And I have no problem taking up that space and saying, you may not mistreat people. But if it's a situation where there's a very strong difference of opinions, I try to focus on respect. Like Shakayra was saying, being solution oriented. So never allowing an attack against a specific person when there is a difference of opinion, and focusing on what the actual issues are and not the individuals delivering it.
Ariana, this next question is for you also. Are you gaining, this is from Gretchen, are you gaining positive momentum from the conversations you're having in the ERG?
This is an interesting question as an organizer. I don't know. So I recently held a conversation on what it means to be an activist and how you can get involved. And I came as a resource. I provided the information that I had, and maybe somebody got something from it. Maybe people thought it was interesting to listen to me talk. But I do my best to focus on what I can deliver, because for the most part, there isn't really sort of a feedback on like, did it work? That's why a lot of the motivation has to be intrinsic. So maybe not a particularly satisfying answer, but that's the truth of being an organizer sometimes.
Thank you for being honest and sharing. That question was written for Ariana, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that subject.
Yeah, I'm probably more the opposite, because I get a lot of feedback. So after every event that I do, I think it's just because it's an exclusive group that is a specific niche that I'm in, that I get a lot of feedback about it being like they finally have a sense of belonging. It's kind of creating that like a place of like a home, you know, outside of your home, with that being like a kind of more psychological thing where people just feel like a invisible warm embrace. So I found that it can be very healing just to talk. That's my positive momentum that kind of carries on, and I kind of always keep in the momentum. I carry on conversations after the events. That's also very important. I would say if you're just starting out, staying in touch with people who attended your event, or even someone that's just showing interest, is very important, because you kind of want to, you know, nurture that connection as you would with a friendship, you know.
Got it. This next question is about something that I think Ariana, you touched on earlier, and it's a little bit educational. So someone is asking, if you're not using the word colored, can you like say which words are more appropriate to use and which are not?
Yes, so I think some important context here is region. I am American, so a person of color, a Black person, African American, their specific ethnicity. Colored is, in America, antiquated and dismissive, and basically just means not white, as in not part of this group, not accepted. So I hope that clarifies that question.
Got it. Shakayra, just if you have any opinion or anything you want to share, just want to give you a chance.
It's actually similar in the UK, but I would say my home country in Austria, that's still up for debate. Not from my end, but just old people in my home country are still quite stuck on those terms. They use the word colored as well. But yeah, it's kind of refreshing that it's kind of a common sense knowledge here that it's not really been used. I haven't really heard it at my events.
I really like this next question. So Sandy asked, have you found there's a participant number range that's best for good connection and conversation, or do you advise putting a limit on participation and wait lists, or keeping meetings like open? And Shakayra, if you want to start.
So I find once it gets to 30 people, especially if that's in person, I mean, I guess it kind of echoes into online events. It gets tricky for everyone to have, you know, a say, because I usually try to give everyone space to talk, but it's difficult once it gets to 30. I would say around 15 people is, if you have a 2-hour event, everyone will have a chance to talk. Everyone can, you know, and also talk and not feel, you know, rushed. You know, you don't want people to feel rushed as if, okay, well, that's enough now. So I think once it gets to 25, 30, it's difficult to, you know, have everyone's attention. Again, if you really want to be mindful in reading the room, I guess it's easier online, but if you're doing an in-person event, sometimes there'll be a person that doesn't feel comfortable, is very shy. So it's your job as a host to then speak to them as well, because they may not feel comfortable to speak up, you know. And if you say, oh, is everything okay? Of course they'll say yes, but you can kind of just talk to them, you know, one-on-one afterwards or during the event, just to make them comfortable as well.
Got it. Ariana, same question.
I think it really depends on the kind of event it is. So if we're talking about, you know, a party where there's information to be gleaned independently, have at it. You can read the posters, you know, no matter how many people there are. If it's more of an intimate discussion, I think 10 people in an active discussion is a really healthy volume. And we've had instances where the RSVPs went up, and we don't close RSVPs. We'll just re-gear our event so that they turn into breakout sessions. So we'll provide some information and then have a Meetup in Color organizer divide up into smaller spaces, or like have people create like conversation groups and then mingle among them. But I think 10 is like a good number if you want really active, interactive conversation.
Got it. Good advice. Julia asked, what steps did you take to accept and like yourself, and as a result, claim your space? Ariana, if you want to take that one first.
Ooh, that's a life question. It's not really an organizer question. So I don't even know how to get into this. So I grew up in the inner city, and then I ended up going to a very, very white school, and I instantly realized that I was different for a lot of reasons that I hadn't realized, and that started my journey of introspective exploration. I went to college, and still very white and a whole different kind of situation, and I started to want to know more about myself, and I left college with an Africana Studies degree. So I actively, formally studied my identity, which I know is not the path that a lot of people choose to take. I also know that was really fast. That was a lot of information to shove in.
No, it was a great answer. Thank you for sharing. Shakayra, same question.
I think for me, funnily enough, I have a similar background in the sense that my school was, I was the only one in my school that was mixed race. So I never really had people that I could relate to, or people that would just welcome me. I was always the outsider. So part of my journey of liking myself was a lot of proactive work on my end. So kind of healing my inner child. So I did that through affirmations daily. I did that twice a day with my mom. But also kind of just forgiving myself for not liking myself, and forgiving others for not believing in me. I feel like forgiveness really liberates you and really helps you heal, because it's all fair and good saying this person's bad, but it kind of starts eating you up inside. So I don't want to carry that burden and carry that grudge for them. If they want to carry that hate with them, that's on them. But I like to have a very easy life. So I kind of just focused on my healing as priority. And then the second step, how I think it's something to do with space, what you asked, but I just surround myself with people who have a similar mindset, who have similar goals, and Mixed Girl Meetup for me is exactly that. I don't have to explain myself 10,000 times. People just get it. And I feel like, why make your life hard? You know, I just surround myself with people who are similar to me, so I don't have to, you know, go crazy with the explanations and feel upset. I'm usually quite content.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We are running low on time, but we have enough time for one more question, and we have a couple questions. So I'm going to kind of merge them together. I think they fit. One is from Sammy and one is from Emanuela. So the question is, what skills, strengths, and strategies do you use to lean into discomfort when participating and maintaining safe or brave spaces? And do you have any tips on breaking the ice?
You mean characteristics of like a good organizer, right? I would say, I mean, confidence definitely goes into it, but I almost would say that it doesn't have to be the traditional confidence. You can kind of fake it. So again, most events, I'm nervous before I start. You just want to be yourself. You might never know who can relate to that. You know, you might even start having something common with that shyness that you have, but also, you know, being consistent and also resilient. It may well be when you start organizing that maybe only 2 people show up or 1 person. I personally thought no one's going to show up. So any person for me was a bonus. That's how I see it. Like, don't expect too much. So you have to be, of course, optimistic, but also realistic. And it really is the work. It's kind of, you're going to get out what you put in. So the amount of work that you do sort of in terms of promotion, you could go old school, you know, just word of mouth, or you just sending out newsletters. And you really have to, again, it sounds corny, you really believe in yourself that your cause is worthy and your cause, you know, will have people that are interested in like wherever they are, you know. And I think I forgot the second part of the question.
I know it's a lot. Amazing.
It's a long question.
It's any icebreaker that comes to mind that really works.
Yeah, icebreakers. So I had, at the beginning of my events, I had flashcards. So I wrote flashcards on pieces of paper. So questions or statements that I have heard throughout like my childhood or when I was at school or at work. And then I would give each person a flashcard, and just randomly, so no one gets to pick, there's no preference or anything. And the person comments on the flashcard. Because I know sometimes, you know, I feel like when we do, oh, let's all do introductions, and we're like, let's not. So I kind of like, I don't like this kind of like, I always kind of see it as, how would I want it to be if I'm at the event, you know? And I don't want to have an awkward intro, because whenever someone asks you for an intro, you just start stuttering and you're like, so I think flashcards are a good way to break ice, or even just saying, I don't know, maybe talking about the weather or what did you eat today? Like, just could be really like minor stuff.
I think you touched on that a little bit in the article that you authored for the Meetup blog. So if anyone's interested in finding that, it is on the blog. Ariana, I know that was a long question, so I'll ask it again, more simply, but what kind of skills and strengths and strategies help you maintain a safe space? And do you have any icebreaker tips?
So I'm just going to skip to the thing Shakayra didn't say. Some things you can practice on your own, no matter how you feel on the inside, is making sure you're presenting well. So your voice, your physical, like the sound of your voice is very important to being able to control the situation. If you're asking people to be vulnerable, then they need to depend on you. Walk through your house and project and enunciate. Make sure that everyone in the room can hear you, can understand you. And the longer you get used to using a big voice, you feel bigger on the outside, and you'll just continue to present bigger. And it will help you maintain that safe space and have people intrinsically feel like they can trust you because you've got it under control.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And any icebreaker?
Oh, I cheat. So because we're an organizer board, we do have like sort of icebreaker questions like, this is what we're talking about. What are your experiences? I always have someone in the audience that I know will answer the question for me. So even if you're mingling in the beginning and you don't know anybody, find that one person and be like, hey, this is the question. If it goes silent, can you back me up here? It's cheating, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
I love that. I love that. We're out of time, but I wanted to thank you both so much for your in-depth answers and all of your insight. I'm seeing the chat going, and such great comments and positivity in there. So thanks everyone for joining. If you tuned in late, this is all recorded. It's going to go on our blog at meetup.com/blog. If you sign up for our newsletter, you can find it there. I'm going to share my screen one last time, just to show you that we're having a beta test. So we're testing some new tools, and if you're interested in trying that out, I'll leave this on here for a little time if you want to copy it down. But meetup.com/LP/beta, we're testing like new tools for scheduling events, and you can tell your members like what you'll be providing and what you'll be bringing and other really cool stuff. So you can find out more on that webpage. But thank you both again so much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thanks. Bye.